much protein can you digest per meal? And how much protein is needed to stimulate muscle growth? Good questions, huh? Let's find out. Okay, so how much protein can you digest per meal? Well, I'm sure you read about that in fitness magazines and Men's Health and all that stuff. Most people say between 25 and 35 grams of protein you can digest per meal. Okay, so in my opinion, it's total BS. And I'll tell you why. If that would be the case, then how did our ancestors survive? Because back in the days, when they went hunting and gathering, sometimes they got lucky and they got some animals, and sometimes they didn't have nothing for a long time. And once they start feasting, they were eating tons of protein all at once. And then they didn't eat for days. And they went back to a fasting period. So if they only could absorb 25 to 35% from that protein, then how did we get here? How did we survive? So what that question really means is, it's a little bit confusing. How much protein is needed to stimulate protein synthesis? That's what the right question is. Because yes, there have been many studies. Between 25 and 35 grams of protein per meal was needed to stimulate protein synthesis. Protein synthesis, for the people that don't know, means when the body is breaking down protein to amino acids and is building muscle. So to keep it simple, it means the body is building muscle. That's what protein synthesis is in simple terms. And and that was between 25 and 35 grams per pound. So also keep in mind that protein has the highest thermic effect. And I talked about this in my previous video. The thermic effect of food is basically the calories the body burns to digest certain foods. And protein has the highest one. It's somewhere between 20 and 30%. So between 20 and 35% of the total calories of protein gets burned off just through digestion. So that also brings the number down. I hope that answered question number one. Question number two is, how much protein is needed to stimulate muscle growth? Well, like we just said, between 25 and 35 grams was needed. That was the minimum to stimulate protein synthesis, which means the body is building muscle. But it also depends on a few factors, and I don't believe that most people talk about this. Because see, all the studies, everything we read in the magazines, it's mostly all based on regular people. And if you're an athlete or somebody who is very active, we're not considered normal people, in a good way, of course. Because we're running down our body, we're breaking down muscle tissue, we burn a lot of calories, we put a lot of strains on our joints and everything. So, and of course, we require more protein. So a lot of the studies when you see in the magazines, they're just based on regular people, like regular people meaning like having a normal 8-hour job, do some cleaning at home, and then the rest of the time watch TV, but somebody who is not very active. And of course those people don't need a lot of protein. For what? All right, so I want to talk about a few things what it depends on, because the amount of protein that's needed, it also depends on your age. The older you get, the more you need. Because when we get older, our hormones are dropping, and we require more vitamins and minerals to keep up the uptake. And especially if you're an active person, if you're an athlete, you definitely need a lot of protein. So especially after 50, that's when you really have to get the protein intake up. And I'll talk about this in a second and how much. Depending on, like we just said, on activity. You know, if you're an active person, you're playing tennis, you're running, you go in the gym, you're breaking down muscle tissue, you know, you need more, you know, protein. And then also, I know a lot of people don't talk about this, but it's you know, a true fact. Whether you're natural or you enhance, that makes a huge difference. If you're a natural person, the body's ability to take up protein has its limitations. But when you take steroids or SARMs, your body is in a 24-hour protein synthesis, and more protein is required for that. So you can take a lot of protein when you're enhanced, and the body can fully absorb it and build muscle with that. And you don't have to worry about, you know, when to eating too much protein, because all the protein you eat, it gets basically it's broken down to amino acids, and then that ends up in a pool in your body, in simple terms, and it just sits there, and whenever the body needs it, it takes it out from there. So you're not wasting anything when it comes to protein. And so as an example, for a 200-pound person, so if you're a regular person, I would say consume at least 0.8 gram per pound. That's, you know, in my opinion, a bare minimum. That means, you know, if you're active, you do some sports, maybe like a couple hours a week, that is enough. You know, for people that are a little bit more active or have more muscle mass, you know, 1 gram per pound is also good. It actually has shown, there's been quite a few studies, and they were testing to see if there's any difference between consuming 0.8 to 1.6 grams per pound throughout the day. So they noticed after, you know, 0.9 grams to 1 gram per pound, there was no extra benefit. You know, the people didn't gain any more muscle. But then again, it depends. It depends on the age group, and it also depends on whether they were enhanced or not. If you enhanced, if you take steroids, you can consume 1.6 gram per pound. Sometimes even more, you know, 2 grams per pound. Anything more than that doesn't really have an additional benefits, but the body can absorb way more protein if you enhanced. So keep that in mind. And then we also have to look at the protein itself, because there's fast acting and there's slow acting proteins. So the fastest acting protein, we probably all know, is the whey protein. The absorption of whey protein is 10 grams per hour. And the slow acting one is eggs and casein. The absorption rate is 3 grams per hour. So what does it tell you? So it wouldn't make sense to have a casein powder or eating eggs right after a workout, because the absorption time is so slow. The body needs the protein right away after training. I mean, it doesn't need it like right away, but it's better if the body can absorb it much quicker to rebuild and to recover. So casein or eggs, believe it or not, makes more sense to eat in your last meal, like before you go to bed. Because by the time you get up, you know, you finish up your absorption of eggs or casein, and throughout the night, especially when you're enhanced, the body is able to build muscle overnight. I mean, you build muscles overnight anyways when you sleep. But what I'm saying is your protein synthesis, especially when you're enhanced, will continue like 24/7. And that's what I meant when I said that before. So to answer the question, if somebody asked one of those questions, it's not a straight answer, because it depends. It depends on a few things. There's always a few variables, you know, depending on your age, depending on how active you are and what kind of activity you're doing. And it also depends on whether you're naturally enhanced. So, you know, it depends on a few things. So I hope I clarified this about protein and what's important. I hope you liked it. Thank you for watching.